Imagine this. You're lying in bed at 2 a.m. wide awake. Not because you're energized, but because something's missing. The promotion you got last month already feels hollow. That person you chased for years and finally won over. Somehow they're not enough. You scroll through your phone, your heart restless, as if it's searching for a puzzle piece that doesn't exist. Then it hits you, you have almost everything you once wanted. So why does it still feel like something is clawing at your insides? Now zoom out. Imagine a world where everyone is doing the same thing, chasing, acquiring, consuming, only to quietly fall apart once the high wears off. More money, more pleasure, more validation, more love, but always the same story. The dopamine peaks, and then it vanishes. The chase begins again, and yet no one stops to ask, what if this endless reaching is the actual prison? Arthur Schopenhauer did, and he didn't sugarcoat the answer. He believed that desire is not just something we feel, it's a curse embedded into our very being, a torment disguised as ambition, love, and success. Not because desire leads to pain when unfulfilled, but because even when fulfilled, it leaves behind a void deeper than before. You think getting what you want will finally bring peace, but what if that belief is the trap itself? Picture a starving man crawling toward a feast. Once he eats, he feels relief, but that relief doesn't last. Hunger returns, again and again. So he keeps crawling, feeding, chasing, but never asking the obvious. Is it possible that the hunger will never leave because it's not in the stomach? It's in the soul. Schopenhauer didn't believe humans were made to be happy. He believed we are puppets, yanked around by invisible strings of desire. Not creators of our fate, but slaves to an impulse that never lets us rest. According to him, this relentless, unconscious drive to want, to reach, to crave, is the true essence of who we are. And it doesn't care about your peace. It only cares about continuing itself, even if it means destroying you. Think about the last time you thought, if I just get this one thing, I'll be okay. How long did that feeling of okay last? An hour? A day? A week? Then the voice came back. Now I need this. What if it never ends? What if it's designed not to? What if everything you've ever worked for, every goal, every ambition, was built on the same flawed premise, that satisfaction is out there, waiting to be caught? And what if that belief is exactly what's keeping you from ever being free? Here's the paradox Schopenhauer forces us to confront. Desire promises fulfillment, but delivers more desire. The more you chase it, the more it multiplies. It's like trying to drink salt water. You're thirsty. It looks like it will help, but every sip makes you thirstier. You keep drinking, convinced that just a little more will finally quench you. But the more you consume, the more dehydrated you become, until it kills you. Now look at your own life. How many things have you burned for, obsessed over, only to get them and feel nothing? Or worse, regret. That dream job, that perfect partner, that six-figure income. Was it ever really about the thing, or was it about the feeling you hoped the thing would give you? What if that feeling never truly arrives? And here's the even darker twist. Once you do get what you want, you're immediately afraid of losing it. So now even success becomes suffering. You're not at peace. You're just in a new kind of prison, one made of anxiety, not lack. And yet we keep going. We call it ambition. We call it growth. We call it life. But deep down, something doesn't add up. Why do we work ourselves sick for things that don't make us feel alive? Why do we cling to people who make us feel empty? Why do we repeat the same cycle of craving and crashing over and over without ever breaking free? Is this just human nature, or is it something more sinister? Schopenhauer thought it was a design flaw in consciousness itself, a loop we're all trapped in, a cosmic joke where the punchline is, you'll never get what you really want, because the moment you do, you'll want something else. But what if that's not a flaw? What if it's intentional? What if it's the very thing keeping the world turning? What would it mean to stop desiring altogether? What would happen to your sense of self if it wasn't built on what you want next? And most of all, what are you without your desires? That's the question we'll now descend into. But be warned, once you see the truth, you can't unsee it. You were taught to believe that desire is what makes life meaningful, that your dreams define you, that your goals give you purpose. You were told, chase what you want and you'll be happy. But what if that idea wasn't designed to set you free? What if it was designed to keep you trapped? Schopenhauer didn't see desire as a tool or a motivator. He saw it as a parasite living inside the psyche, one that attaches itself to your identity and feeds on your sense of lack. The moment you're conscious, it's already there, whispering, pulling, urging, and the worst part, you mistake it for your voice. Let's break that open. From the moment you're born, you're driven by need, hunger, attention, warmth. But as you grow, those primal urges evolve into abstract ones: love, status, validation, purpose. And while the surface changes, the mechanism doesn't. Carl Jung called this part of the mind the shadow, the hidden, unconscious impulses that drive you without your awareness. He believed most people live in service to their shadow without ever confronting it. Schopenhauer would agree, but he'd go further. Your shadow doesn't just influence your behavior, it is your behavior. It's the hunger behind your ambition, the ache behind your love, the fear behind your dreams. And once desire becomes unconscious, it turns into something far more dangerous: identity. You start believing you are your goals, that your worth depends on reaching them, that your emotions are evidence of their importance. But what if you're just emotionally enslaved to a narrative you didn't write? Nietzsche warned us of this too. He spoke of the will to power, an innate force in all of us that wants to assert itself, dominate, expand. But unlike Schopenhauer, Nietzsche didn't believe this force was evil. He believed it could be transformed if you were conscious enough to take control of it. Most never are, because modern society, whether it's capitalism, culture, or even self-help philosophy, depends on the same lie: keep wanting more, more beauty, more money, more achievement, more meaning. Why? Because if you stop wanting, you stop consuming. If you stop craving, you stop obeying. If you stop chasing, you stop being predictable. Desire makes you manageable. It makes you marketable. It makes you manipulatable. And the worst part is, you participate in your own enslavement willingly. You romanticize your pain. You call your anxiety ambition. You think your emotional burnout is a sign you're working hard. But deep down, you're just a prisoner shackled to the idea that life has to be earned through striving. Aldous Huxley once observed that man has an almost infinite capacity for taking things for granted. We take desire for granted. We treat it as natural. But nature doesn't always care about your peace. It cares about survival, reproduction, propagation. Schopenhauer saw that the human will is nature's Trojan horse. It keeps the species going, not by joy, but by suffering. He called it the will to life, a blind, irrational force that pushes us to want, to need, to lust, to compete, not for our sake, but for life's sake. You think you love someone because they're special, but what if you love them because the will decided you should reproduce with their DNA? You think you want success because it reflects your effort, but what if success is just a temporary sedative, one that numbs you long enough to chase the next high? Here's the brutal irony. Even when you think you're rebelling by rejecting tradition, quitting your job, traveling the world, you're still desiring. Freedom becomes a new craving. Authenticity becomes another addiction. You just swapped one leash for another. And this isn't just philosophy, it's psychological too. Modern neuroscience shows that our brain's reward system is wired for anticipation, not satisfaction. Dopamine spikes when you want, not when you get. That means the craving is the actual thrill, not the having, which means your brain rewards you for feeling unsatisfied. Think about that. Your neurology is rigged to keep you restless, not because something's wrong with you, but because that's how the system sustains itself. Jean-Paul Sartre took this even deeper. He said man is a useless passion. We are condemned, he argued, to project meaning onto a meaningless world driven by desires we didn't choose, chasing fulfillment that never arrives. And yet, we keep going, because the alternative, silence, stillness, contentment, terrifies us. Not because it's bad, but because it feels like death. If you're not chasing something, who are you? Desire gives your ego something to grip, something to chase, something to fear. But what if that grip is actually what's choking you? Imagine someone in a raging river, desperately clutching a heavy rock because they think it will keep them from drowning. But the rock is what's dragging them under. That's what desire does. It gives you an illusion of control while quietly drowning you in discontent. So here's the hidden problem, laid bare. You don't control your desires. Your desires control you, and they wear your voice, they use your memories, they borrow your emotions. You think you're making choices, but you're just obeying cravings dressed up as decisions. The real tragedy isn't that desire causes suffering. The real tragedy is that you think it's you, that you believe the fire burning inside you must be followed, that every longing must be honored, that every ache must mean something. But what if it doesn't? What if that ache isn't a call to action, but a signal to wake up? Because if you never question what you want or why you want it, you'll never be free. And if you never break the loop becomes your life. The question is, are you ready to see what that loop is really doing to you? You wake up, check your phone, feel a pang of anxiety. You don't call it that though. You call it motivation. A to-do list stares back at you like a prison guard. You scroll. Everyone is doing something bigger, better, faster. Someone got married. Someone went viral. Someone launched their dream brand at 23. You feel behind. Again, that sense of urgency, it's not real. It's not instinct. It's conditioning. Because here's the part no one tells you. The world you live in thrives on your dissatisfaction. It depends on it. You weren't born thinking you weren't enough. You were taught that, taught to chase, taught to compare, taught that rest is laziness and stillness is failure, taught that happiness is a future achievement, never a present experience. And so you run toward promotions, abs partnerships, attention, likes, lifestyle upgrades, because you've been programmed to believe that your emptiness is a problem to solve, not a reality to confront. Schopenhauer would call this delusion a symptom of the will. The will doesn't care about your happiness. It only cares about continuity, that you keep moving. And modern society has turned that impulse into an empire. They call it grind culture. They call it growth. They call it finding your passion. But it's all one game. Keep your attention fixed on something just out of reach. And when you get it, move the goalpost. Because if you ever truly felt fulfilled, you'd stop buying. You'd stop performing. You'd stop producing. And that makes you useless to a system that survives on your exhaustion. Let's get more personal. You finally get the job. The salary's nice. But now your lifestyle inflates. More expenses, more expectations, more pressure. You're not secure. You're just more anxious at a higher income bracket. You fall in love. It's intoxicating at first. But slowly, fear creeps in. Fear of losing them. Fear of not being enough. Now, instead of desire, you're possessed by anxiety. You go viral online. You feel seen for a day, then the silence returns. You chase the next hit of validation. It doesn't come. Now you feel invisible. That's the loop. Desire, fulfillment, emptiness, new desire. It doesn't matter how many times you go around. You always end up in the same place. And every time you're convinced, this time it'll be different. It won't, because the mechanism is rigged. Neuroscientist Kent Berridge calls this phenomenon the wanting versus liking paradox. You can want something intensely without actually liking it when you get it. The brain's dopamine system lights up when you anticipate a reward, but barely reacts when the reward arrives. So we live in this constant forward lean, never in the moment, always in the pursuit. And here's where it gets darker. This loop doesn't just steal your peace, it warps your identity. You start measuring yourself by what you don't have yet. You define your self-worth by how fast you're progressing. You evaluate your relationships by how much they satisfy your cravings. Everything becomes transactional. Every moment is filtered through the lens of what can this give me? Even spirituality becomes a hustle. Even healing becomes a brand. You're not living, you're managing a persona built around cravings. And beneath that performance, something begins to rot. Your attention span fractures. Your sense of wonder dies. Dakane. A joy becomes conditional. That conditional. The emotions are hijacked by algorithms. Because desire isn't just internal, it's weaponized. Social media is engineered to amplify envy. Marketing plays on your insecurities. Culture convinces you that inner peace is weakness and that desire is strength. But it's not strength, it's dependence. You're dependent on recognition to feel valuable, dependent on progress to feel okay, dependent on stimulation to feel alive. That's not power, that's addiction. Jean Baudrillard once wrote, "We live in a world where there is more and more information and less meaning. Desire overloads you with input, options, possibilities, but none of it satisfies because none of it's real. Desire doesn't want you to find meaning. It wants you to stay busy. And in that busyness, you forget to question the most important thing. Do I actually want what I'm chasing? Or have I just been conditioned to want it? You think you're ambitious, but what if you're just afraid to stop? You think you're passionate, But what if you're just addicted to intensity because stopping feels like death, like disappearing, like irrelevance? And that's what the modern world has trained you to fear most. Here's the hidden tragedy. If you never step out of this loop, you never meet your real self. You meet the hungry version, the chasing version, the achievement obsessed, attention deprived, always needing something more version, but not the still one, not the silent one, not the one who could exist without striving. And because of that, you never really feel peace. Not for long, not for real. You might experience highs, wins, climaxes, but they're followed by crashes, by doubt, by the next desire forming in the shadows. You've never known what it's like to simply be with nothing to reach for, nothing to prove, nothing to fear, because you've been programmed to believe that being isn't enough, that you aren't enough, unless you're becoming more. But what if the truth is the opposite? What if the part of you that's always becoming is what's killing you? What if stillness isn't death, but rebirth? You felt it before, in rare moments, a quiet walk, a deep conversation, watching someone sleep beside you, moments where time dissolves, where you forget to want. And in those moments, you feel something you can't explain, not happiness, not excitement, something older, something deeper, freedom, not the freedom to chase what you want, but the freedom from the wanting itself. But that kind of freedom requires something terrifying, letting go of the chase, letting go of the identity built around desire, letting go of who you think you are. And that's not easy because desire doesn't let go of you. You have to fight your way out. So now the question becomes, is there a way to rebel? Is there a way to break the loop, not by satisfying the will, but by transcending it entirely? There is, but it's not what you think, and it begins with a single radical act. You're standing at the edge of a cliff. Behind you is the world you know, the chase, the noise, the endless striving. In front of you is stillness. Silence. No more climbing. Just the terrifying possibility of being without becoming. Your body trembles because no one ever taught you how to just be. And yet, this right here is where rebellion begins. Not in protest, not in revolution, but in refusal. Refusing to chase what doesn't satisfy. Refusing to believe every craving is a command. Refusing to let the will define who you are. This is not the rebellion of fire. It is the rebellion of starvation. You starved the will by denying it your obedience. Schopenhauer said the only true freedom was denial of the will to live, not suicide, but a deep inner renunciation of desire itself. To look temptation in the face and say, I see you, I understand you, but you do not own me. You become the observer, not the puppet. You see, freedom isn't found in satisfying desire. That only strengthens it. Freedom begins the moment you stop believing that wanting equals needing. But how? Let's break it down, because this isn't about becoming numb. It's about becoming clear, becoming awareness, becoming the watcher. The first step is radical self-honesty. You have to begin watching your desires like a scientist, not a servant. You feel the urge to scroll, to snack, to text your ex, to chase validation. Instead of acting, pause, watch, label, say it out loud. This is a craving. It is not me. It is not truth. It is a wave, and I am the ocean beneath it. This act alone, this separation breaks the spell. The will loses power when it is exposed. Viktor Frankl once said, between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose. That space is the birthplace of rebellion, sacred refusal, practicing voluntary non-attachment. Start saying no to things you used to chase, not out of discipline, but out of insight. Say no to the compulsive need to explain yourself. Say no to buying something just to feel worthy. Say no to romantic obsessions that drain you. Say no to goals that come from fear, not love. Not because you're ascetic, not because you're above it, but because you see through it. When you practice sacred refusal, you reclaim energy. You stop leaking your soul into things that don't feed it. This is how you starve the will, not by force, but by awareness and non-cooperation. Day 3, finding the still point, reconnecting to being. Once you stop feeding the machine, something miraculous begins to surface. A different version of you, one who isn't always calculating, comparing, acquiring, one who doesn't panic in silence, one who can sit with boredom and not flinch. This is what monks, mystics, and sages across history discovered. The peace you're chasing isn't at the end of desire. It's beneath it, Wait, when Schopenhauer studied Eastern philosophy, Buddhism, Hinduism, the Upanishads, he realized that detachment wasn't denial of life. It was life without the leash. You don't stop feeling. You stop clinging. You don't stop striving completely. You stop being possessed by the outcome. It's not apathy. It's freedom from compulsion. That's for living in paradox, wanting without needing. Here's the real mind bender. You can still have goals, still create, still fall in love, but without being driven by inner lack. When you break that identification with desire, you begin to act from fullness, not toward it. You write not to be admired, but because there's music in your bones. You build not to feel worthy, but because creation itself is an act of love. You love people not to possess them, but to witness them. This is liberated desire, desire unshackled from ego, desire that flows, not enslaves. It's what the Stoics called apatheia, not indifference, but mastery over passion. It's what the Taoists called wu wei, effortless action, aligned with the rhythm of the universe. 5. Making room for the real self. When the noise of desire quiets, even for a moment, you start to hear something else, something softer, something you forgot was there. Your intuition, your inner silence, your real voice. Most people never meet that version of themselves. They die as collections of cravings, always becoming, never being. But once you make room by letting go of what you think you need, something authentic steps forward. It's quiet, it's calm, it doesn't scream or seduce or panic. It just is. And for the first time, you realize this is what you were looking for all along. Not the next thing, not the next person, not the next level, but this still, vast, uncontrollable aliveness within you. And it was never missing. You were just drowning in desire, too loud to hear it. And PD, so what does rebellion look like? Really, it's not quitting your job or moving to a cabin in the woods, though you could. It's not renouncing the world, but seeing through it. It's waking up every day and asking, what would I do today if I didn't believe desire owned me? Who would I be if I stopped chasing and started listening? It's the decision to act from depth, not hunger, from wisdom, not fear, from presence, not craving. That's how you escape the trap. Not by burning down the system, but by no longer needing what it sells. You become dangerous, unmarketable, untouchable, because a person who doesn't need is a person who can't be controlled. And that's the rarest freedom of all. But this journey doesn't end here. There's one more layer, one final truth, deeper than rebellion. And once you see it, it rewires everything. Not just how you live, but why you exist at all. You've stopped running. The noise has quieted. The cravings have lost their edge. You're no longer whipped forward by invisible leashes, no longer trapped in the cage of what's next. But now a deeper question echoes through the silence. If I am not my desires, then what am I? It's the most terrifying and liberating question you can ask. Because without desire, without the chase, the struggle, the forward momentum, everything collapses. Your ambitions, your fears, your identity. There's no more persona to protect. No more image to curate, no more you as you thought you were. And that's when it hits you, the final, most disturbing and beautiful truth. There was never anything missing. There was never anything you had to earn, chase, or prove. The absence you've been trying to fill your whole life wasn't real. It was a shadow cast by the belief that you should be somewhere else, someone else, something else. You weren't born broken. You were born into a world that convinced you that you were. And desire was the lie it used to keep you in line. This is Schopenhauer's final twist of the knife, and it's also where he and the mystics, the poets, the monks, and the philosophers all quietly agree. Peace isn't found by feeding the will, it's found by transcending it, and transcendence doesn't mean escaping the world. It means seeing through it. It means recognizing that your experience of life, your emotional reality was never tied to the thing you wanted. It was tied to your interpretation of lack. Let that sink in. Desire isn't pain because you don't have what you want. Desire is pain because you believe you need it to be whole. But if you question that, if you stop assuming you're incomplete, something wild happens. The wanting collapses, not forcibly, not through suppression, but naturally, like a fire that goes out when the fuel runs dry. And what's left when the fire dies? Stillness, presence. You, the one beneath all the projections. Not the one who needs to become, but the one who already is. Schopenhauer, for all his pessimism, hinted at this. He saw flashes of it in music, in art, in contemplation, moments when the will paused, when we became for a brief second free from wanting. He saw this freedom most clearly in asceticism, voluntary renunciation, not as punishment, but as liberation. The ascetic doesn't deny pleasure because he hates life. He denies it because he's tasted something deeper, a joy that doesn't come from stimulation, but from silence. That's the ultimate truth. Joy was never the opposite of desire. It was what remained once desire vanished. Picture this. You're standing in front of a mirror. Every desire you've ever had, every craving, insecurity, obsession is clinging to you like a costume, layer after layer of need. You begin to peel them off, not violently, gently, one by one. I need to be admired. Gone. I need to be successful. Gone. I need to be loved to feel worthy. Gone. Soon, there's nothing left. You look in the mirror, you expect to see emptiness, but you don't. You see something raw, still, alive. Not you as you've always known yourself, but something older, wiser, untouched by fear or hunger. Consciousness itself, not shaped by desire, not driven by lack. Just present, aware, free. This is what the mystics called your true nature. This is what the philosophers tried to articulate with logic, what the artists tried to capture in metaphor. This is the part of you that was never born and will never die, the part untouched by the will, the part that doesn't want, because it already is. You see, the truth Schopenhauer hinted at, but didn't fully walk into, is that behind the veil of desire, there is no self to satisfy, only awareness, only being. And when you touch that, truly touch it, you don't become apathetic. You become lit from within. You don't lose motivation. You lose the need for motivation. You act not because you lack something, but because you're overflowing. You create not to be seen, but because you can't help but pour beauty into the world. You love not to fill a hole, but because there's nothing missing to begin with. This is what it means to live without the will, not to die to life, but to finally start living on your own terms, unshackled, unowned, unburdened. And here's the final paradox. When you no longer need anything, you become capable of anything, because fear loses its grip, desire loses its pull, and you begin to act, not react. Your life becomes art, not strategy. So now ask yourself, one last time, what if nothing's missing? What if you stopped waiting for permission to feel whole? What if you've been chasing something you've never actually lacked? The world wants you to forget, because remembering makes you powerful, dangerous, free. But now you know, the loop ends here, not by running harder, not by achieving more, but by remembering who you were before the craving began. And once you taste that freedom, even for a second, you'll never settle for the lie again. So take a breath. Feel the silence behind the noise, the stillness behind the motion, the being beneath the becoming. That's you. That's what's real. That's what was always waiting underneath the will. And now that you've seen it, don't ever forget.